The words hit me like a slap across the face, even through the sterile hospital phone. "Marcus, you need to get here now. Your grandfather is asking for you." My assistant Sarah's voice was trembling, which was unusual for someone who'd handled hostile takeovers and boardroom battles by my side for the past 8 years. He's dying, Marcus. Tonight. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stood in my corner office on the 47th floor of the Pinnacle Tower in downtown Chicago, looking out at the city lights that had become my kingdom. At 34, I was the youngest CEO in the history of Davidson Industries, a company I'd built from nothing into a multi-billion-dollar empire. The irony wasn't lost on me that the man who'd once called me worthless was now asking for the one person he'd spent years trying to destroy. "Cancel everything," I told Sarah, my hand already reaching for my coat. "Push the Goldman meeting to next week. Tell the board I'll be out indefinitely." The drive to Cedar Grove Hospital took 43 minutes through Chicago traffic, but it felt like a lifetime. Every red light, every slow-moving car ahead of me felt like the universe was forcing me to confront memories I'd spent years burying under success, under achievement, under the relentless pursuit of proving him wrong. My name is Marcus Thompson, and I'm about to tell you a story about hatred, redemption, and the words that can either destroy a man or forge him into something unbreakable. This isn't just about business success or family drama. This is about the moment when everything you thought you knew about your life gets turned upside down by a dying man's whisper. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and desperation. I'd been in places like this before, usually visiting employees who'd been injured on construction sites or attending charity events. But walking down that long, fluorescent-lit hallway toward room 314, I felt like I was 17 again, standing in my grandfather's study while he delivered his verdict on my future. "You're worthless, Marcus. Absolutely worthless. Your father was weak. Your mother was a dreamer, and you're just another disappointment in a long line of Thompson failures. You'll never amount to anything." Those words had been carved into my soul 27 years ago, and they'd been the fuel that drove every decision I'd made since. Every late night, every risk taken, every deal closed, every competitor crushed, it all traced back to that moment when Harold Thompson, my grandfather, had looked at his 7-year-old grandson and declared him a failure before he'd even had a chance to try. The nurse outside his room was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes that reminded me of my mother. "Are you Marcus?" she asked softly. "He's been asking for you all day. He's been saying your name." I nodded, suddenly feeling like my expensive Italian suit was made of paper. "How long does he have?" "Hours, maybe less. The cancer spread faster than we expected. He's been refusing pain medication because he said he needed to stay clear-headed for when you arrived." Even dying, Harold Thompson was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to orchestrate his final scene. I straightened my shoulders, the same way I did before walking into hostile board meetings, and pushed open the door. The man in the bed looked nothing like the giant who'd haunted my childhood. Harold Thompson had been 6'4", broad-shouldered, with hands that could crush a man's spirit with a single gesture. The person lying under those white sheets was shrunken, gray, connected to machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical precision. But his eyes, those cold, calculating blue eyes, they were exactly the same. "Marcus," he whispered, and his voice was like gravel. "You came. You asked for me," I said, staying near the door. Even weakened, even dying, I wasn't ready to get too close. "What do you want, Harold?" He winced. Whether from pain or hearing me use his first name, I couldn't tell. "Sit down, boy. Please." I pulled the visitor's chair to the foot of the bed, not beside it. 27 years of conditioning wasn't going to be overcome by a terminal diagnosis. "I'm here. Talk." "Look at you," he said, and for a moment I couldn't tell if there was pride or regret in his voice. "CEO of Davidson Industries. I read about you in Forbes, youngest billionaire in the Midwest. You proved me wrong, did I?" The question came. Out sharper than I intended, or did I prove you right in the worst possible way? His laugh turned into a cough that shook his entire frame. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I became exactly what you taught me to be. cold, ruthless, willing to destroy anyone who got in my way. I built my empire on the foundation you laid, the belief that human connection is weakness, that trust is a liability, that the only thing that matters is winning. Harold's eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw a flash of the man who'd terrorized my childhood. You think that's what I taught you, isn't it? I leaned forward, 27 years of suppressed anger finally finding its voice. Let me remind. You have some lessons, Harold? When I was 8 and wanted to join Little League, you told me sports were for boys who couldn't think. When I was 12 and showed you my Strata report card, you said grades don't matter if you don't have spine. When I was 16 and got accepted to Northwestern on a full scholarship, you said college was where weak men went to waste for years learning theories instead of building character. Marcus, I'm not finished. My voice was rising, and I could hear the machines beeping faster. When I was 22 and started my first business, you told me I was too young, too naive, too soft. When that business failed, you said it was proof that the Thompson bloodline had finally run dry. When I started my second company, you didn't even acknowledge it existed. And when I bought my first building, my first real success, you know what you said? He was staring at me now, and I could see something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Fear? Regret? I didn't care. You said one building doesn't make you a real estate mogul, Marcus. It makes you a man with a mortgage. Do you remember that, Harold? Because I remember every word, every dismissal, every time you made me feel like I wasn't enough. The room was quiet except for the machines and the sound of his labored breathing. When he spoke again, his voice was so soft I almost didn't hear him. I remember all of it, he said, every word, every moment. And I remember why. Enlighten me, because I was terrified. The words came out like a confession, because you were everything I never was, and I was terrified of what that meant. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. What are you talking about? You want to know about the Thompson bloodline, Marcus? About what you came from? Let me tell you about your great-grandfather, William Thompson. He was a dreamer, a poet, a man who believed in beauty and kindness and all the things that get you killed in this world. He died, broke, and forgotten, leaving his family in poverty. Harold's eyes were distant now, lost in memories I'd never heard before. Your grandfather, my father, he was weak, a gentle man who let people walk all over him. He worked 3 jobs to support his family and died of a heart attack at 45 because he was too kind to say no to anyone who needed help. So, you decided to become the opposite. I decided to become what I thought would protect the people I loved. I built Thompson Construction from nothing, Marcus. I clawed my way up from laying bricks to owning half the development contracts in Chicago. I made myself into someone people feared because I thought that was the only way to survive. And my father. Harold's face crumpled. Your father was like you, kind, intelligent, creative. He wanted to be an architect. Did you know that? He had dreams of designing buildings that would inspire people, that would make the world more beautiful. And I crushed every one of those dreams because I thought I was protecting him. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What do you mean? I made him work construction, told him art was for people who couldn't handle real work. I pushed him into business deals he hated, forced him to become someone he wasn't. And when he finally stood up to me, when he finally said he wanted to follow his own path, what happened? I disowned him, told him he was dead to me, that if he walked away from the family business, he'd never be welcome back. Harold's voice was breaking now. 3 months later, he was dead. Car accident. On his way to a job interview at an architecture firm in Milwaukee, he was trying to start over, to become the man he should have been, and I never got the chance to tell him I was sorry. The machine seemed louder now, filling the silence between us. I felt like I was seeing Harold Thompson for the first time. Not as the monster from my childhood, but as a man who'd been shaped by his own fears and traumas. That's why you hated me, I said quietly, because I reminded you of him. I didn't hate you, Marcus. I was terrified of you. You had his eyes, his curiosity, his gentleness. And I knew that if I let you stay soft, if I let you believe in dreams, and kindness and trust, the world would destroy you the same way it destroyed him. So you decided to destroy me first? I decided to make you strong, to make you into someone who could survive anything. Even me. He coughed again, and I could see flecks of blood on his lips. Every cruel word, every dismissal, every time I made you feel worthless, it wasn't because I believed you were worthless. It was because I was trying to forge you into something unbreakable. You're telling me that 27 years of psychological abuse was meant to help me? I'm telling you that a broken man doesn't know how to create anything but broken things. And I'm telling you that despite everything I did to you, you became something I never could have imagined. You became successful without becoming cruel. You built an empire without losing your humanity. Stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, Chicago stretched out in all directions, and I could see the lights of Davidson Industries headquarters in the distance. You don't know anything about who I became, Harold. You don't know what I had to do to build this company. You don't know the people I had to step on, the corners I had to cut, the parts of myself I had to sacrifice, don't I? His voice was getting weaker, but there was something in it that made me turn around. Marcus, who do you think has been watching you all these years? Who do you think has been following every deal, every acquisition, every decision you've made? Not. You talking about? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Room 314 at Cedar Grove Hospital isn't a coincidence, Marcus. I've been a patient here for 6 months, cancer treatment. And do you know what's across the street from this hospital? I looked out the window and felt the blood drained from my face. Across the street was the Davidson Industries Employee Wellness Center, a facility I'd built 3 years ago to provide free health care to all company employees and their families. You built that, Harold whispered. You built it because you said no employee should have to choose between their health and their job. You built it because you remembered what it felt like to be powerless, to be dismissed, to be told you didn't matter. That's just good business. Happy employees are productive employees. Marcus, you have 15,000 employees. You pay them 40% above market rate. You provide full health care, education, assistance, and profit sharing. You've never had a single layoff? Even during the 2008 recession when you could have cut costs and increased profits. You've donated over $200 million to literacy programs and youth centers in Chicago. It's not just good business. That's the heart your father had. That's the gentleness I tried to beat out of you. I sank back into the chair, my head spinning. Why are you telling me this now? Because I'm dying and I need you to understand something. You didn't become successful despite what I did to you. You became successful because of who you already were. The strength was always there, Marcus. The kindness, the intelligence, the leadership, all of it was already inside you. I just convinced you it was a weakness so you'd hide it until you were strong enough to use it properly. That's not how it worked, Harold. You nearly destroyed me, I know. And I'm sorry. But look at what you survived. Look at what you built. Look at the man you became despite having every reason to become bitter and cruel. You took everything I did to you and used it to understand what it feels like to be dismissed, to be undervalued, to be told you're not enough, and then you built a company culture that makes sure no one else ever feels that way. The machines were beeping more irregularly now, and I could see him struggling to stay conscious. Marcus, I need you to know something. I need you to understand what I should have told you 27 years ago. What's that? His eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in them that I'd never seen before. Love. Pure, desperate, dying love. I was wrong, he whispered. I was wrong about everything. You were never worthless. You were the most valuable thing in my life, and I was too broken to see it, too afraid to say it, too proud to admit that everything I thought I knew about. Strength and success was just fear dressed up as wisdom. I felt tears on my cheeks and realized I was crying. Harold ... Your father would be so proud of you, he said, his voice barely audible now. And your mother? God, your mother would be so proud. You became everything they dreamed you could be, and you did it while keeping the best parts of yourself intact. You proved that kindness isn't weakness. You proved that success doesn't require cruelty. You proved that a man can be both strong and gentle, both successful and human. I don't know how to forgive you, I said honestly. I don't know how to let go of 27 years of anger. You don't have to forgive me, he said, but I need you to forgive yourself. I need you to stop carrying my mistakes like they're your flaws. I need you to understand that every cruel word I said about you was a lie I told myself to justify. My own cowardice. The machine started beeping more frantically, and I could see him fading. Marcus, there's something. Something I need to tell you. Something about your parents. About the night they died? What about it? Wasn't an accident. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire I couldn't see. It wasn't an accident. Harold's breathing was becoming more labored, but his eyes burned with an urgency that made my blood run cold. What do you mean it wasn't an accident? My voice came out steady, but my hands were shaking. They died in a car crash. I was 7 years old, Harold. I remember the police coming to the house. I remember you picking me up from school and telling me they weren't coming home. The crash was real, he whispered, struggling to lift his head slightly. But the circumstances. Marcus, your father found something. Something about Thompson. Construction that he wasn't supposed to know. The machines around us seemed to grow louder, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Found what? We had contracts with the city. Big ones. The kind that built. Careers and fortunes. But some of them. Harold's eyes closed for a moment, and I thought he might be slipping away. But then they opened again, focused and desperate. Some of them were bought, paid for. Bribes to city officials, kickbacks to inspectors, corners cut on safety standards. Felt like the floor was shifting beneath me. You're saying Thompson Construction was corrupt? I'm saying I was corrupt. The company was just a tool. Your father discovered the books, the real books. He found payments to Councilman Bradley, to Inspector Martinez, to half a dozen officials who were supposed to be overseeing our work. Harold's voice was getting weaker, but the words kept coming. He confronted me about it, said he was going. To the FBI? So you killed him? The accusation came out before I could stop it, raw and desperate. No, Harold's denial was so forceful it triggered another coughing fit. No, Marcus. I would never... I loved your father. I was trying to protect him. Protect him from what? From Vincent Castellano. The name hit me like a physical blow. Vincent Castellano. Even 27 years later, that name carried weight in Chicago. The Castellano family had controlled construction unions in city. Contracts for decades through a combination of legitimate business and methods that were anything but. The Castellanos were your partners. They were my investors. Silent partners. They provided the capital for big projects, and in return, they got their share of the profits. Legitimate, but Vinny had his own ways of ensuring we got the contracts we needed. I stood up again, pacing to the window. The Chicago skyline looked different now, tainted by revelations I wasn't prepared to handle. And my father found out. He was going through the financial records, preparing for his departure from the company. He wanted to make sure his portion of the business was clean before he walked away. That's when he discovered the payments, the shell companies, the way. Certain projects always seemed to go our way despite being outbid. What did he do? He came to me first. It gave me a chance to explain, to make it right. Your father was a good man, Marcus. Better than I deserved. Said he'd give me 2 weeks to unwind the Castellano partnership and come clean to the authorities. If I didn't, he'd take everything he'd found to the FBI himself. Harold paused, his breathing becoming more irregular. A nurse appeared in the doorway, checking the monitors, but I waved her away. This conversation was 27 years overdue. Tried Harold continued. I went to Vinny, told him we needed to end our arrangement. Told him my son had discovered our partnership and was threatening to expose everything. Vinny didn't take it well. What did he say? Said your father was a problem that needed to be solved? Said there were 2 ways to handle problems. You either bought them or buried them. He offered to buy your father's silence first. $1 million to forget what he'd seen and keep his mouth shut. My father wouldn't have taken it. He didn't. I went to him with Vinny's offer, thinking maybe if the money was good enough, if it meant security for you and your mother. Harold's voice trailed off. But your father looked at me like I'd suggested selling my soul. He said some things were more important than money. Said he couldn't live with himself knowing that buildings were going up with substandard materials, that safety inspections were being faked, that people could get hurt. So what happened? Vinny made the decision for all of us. He said if your father wouldn't be bought, he'd have to be eliminated. But he wanted to make it look like an accident, something that wouldn't draw attention to our business arrangements. Room felt like it was spinning. I gripped the windowsill to steady myself. You let them kill my parents. I tried to stop it. Harold's voice cracked. I told Vinny I'd handle it, that I'd convince your father to stay quiet. I begged him to give me more time, but Vinny said the decision was made, said it was better for everyone if the problem just ... disappeared. Why didn't you warn them? Why didn't you tell my father to run, to take us and get out of Chicago? Because I was a coward. The admission came out like a death rattle, because I was so deep in Castellano's pocket that I couldn't see a way out that didn't destroy everything. I'd built because I convinced myself that maybe Vinny was bluffing, that maybe he wouldn't actually go through with it. I turned back to face him, and the sight of this broken man in the hospital bed made me feel sick, not with pity, but with rage. You chose your business over your son's life. I chose wrong. I chose everything wrong, Marcus. And I've lived with that choice every day for 27 years. Tell me exactly what happened that night. Harold closed his eyes, and for a moment I thought he might refuse. But then he started talking, his voice barely above a whisper. Your father was driving to meet with an FBI agent. Agent Rebecca Martinez, no relation to the inspector. She'd been investigating corruption in the construction industry, and your father had contacted her office. They were supposed to meet at a coffee shop in Oak Park at 9 o'clock. How do you know all this? 'Cause Vinny told me. Afterward, he wanted me to know exactly what I'd caused, what my weakness had cost. Harold opened his eyes, and I saw something in them that looked like self-hatred. Vinny had your father's phone tapped. He knew about the meeting. He knew the route your father would take. And they tampered with the brakes, made it look like mechanical failure. Your father was driving down that steep hill on Roosevelt Road, approaching the intersection with Harlem Avenue. The brakes failed right as he hit the intersection. He slammed into a delivery truck running a red light. The details were too specific, too real. I felt like I was going to be sick. My mother? She was with him. She'd insisted on coming to the meeting. Said if they were going to start over, she wanted to be part of it from the beginning. She wanted to support him. I sank back into the chair, my head in my hands. Everything I'd believed about my parents' death, everything I'd been told was a lie. They hadn't died in some random accident. They'd been murdered because my father had tried to do the right thing. What happened afterward? Vinny made it clear that the same thing would happen to you if anyone ever connected your parents. Death to our business. He said accidents could happen to anyone, even children, so I kept quiet. I took you in, raised you, and never said a word about what really happened. You raised me? I looked up at him, anger flaring again. You tortured me for 27 years. You made me feel worthless, inadequate, never good enough. You call that raising me? I was trying to make you strong enough to survive, Harold said. Vinny Castellano was still out there, still connected to politicians, still controlling construction contracts. I knew that if you ever got involved in the family business, if you ever tried to investigate what happened to your parents, he'd kill you too. So you pushed me away from construction, made me hate the family business. I made you hate me. I made you want to build something completely separate from Thompson Construction, something that had nothing to do with the world that killed your parents. And it worked, Marcus. You built Davidson Industries from scratch. You stayed away from construction, from city contracts, from anything that might put you on Vinny's radar. I stared at him, trying to process this twisted logic. You destroyed my childhood to protect me from a mobster. I destroyed my relationship with you to keep you alive. I told myself every day that it was worth it, that keeping you safe was more important than keeping you close. What about justice? What about making sure the people who killed my parents paid for what they did? Harold's laugh was bitter and weak. Justice. Marcus Vincent Castellano owned half the Chicago Police Department. He had judges in his pocket, prosecutors on his payroll. Going after him would have been suicide, so you just let him get away. With it, I let him think he'd gotten away with it. But I spent the last 27 years making sure he paid in other ways. Oh, what do you mean? Harold's eyes took on a different quality. Something almost predatory despite his weakened state. Thompson Construction had dirt on a lot of people, Marcus. Records of bribes, photos of meetings, recordings of conversations. Your father wasn't the only one who'd been keeping track of Vinny's operations. You blackmailed him? I made sure that every major construction project Vinny tried to bid on had problems. Permits that got delayed, inspections that found violations. City officials who suddenly developed consciences. I used every connection I had, every favor I was owed, to make sure Castellano Construction slowly bled money and lost influence. For 27 years? For 27 years? By 2010, Vinny was broke. His company went under, his political connections dried up, and his own family pushed him out of the organization. He died 3 years ago, alone and forgotten. A strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness at this news. You got your revenge. I got justice. Slow, careful justice that didn't put you at risk. But it wasn't enough, Marcus. Nothing could bring your parents back. Nothing could undo the damage I did to you in the process. The machine started beeping more urgently again, and I could see Harold struggling to stay conscious. But there was something else in his eyes now, something that looked almost like relief. There's more, he whispered. About your inheritance. About why I really called you here tonight. What inheritance? You spent 27 years telling me I'd never get a penny from you? That was another lie. Everything I owned. Everything. Thompson Construction was worth when I sold it 5 years ago. Every investment I made with Castellano's blood money. It's all yours, Marcus. $68 million? Sitting in an account that's been waiting for you since your 18th? Weekend. When was it? Where would I rubber? I stared at him in shock. What? I couldn't give it to you before. Couldn't explain where it came from without telling you the truth about your parents. But now you need to know everything. Because there's one more secret, Marcus. More thing I've been keeping from you? What now? Vincent Castellano had a son, Anthony Castellano. 3 months ago, he started asking questions about your parents' death. About you. About Davidson Industries. The blood drained from my face. What kind of questions? The kind that suggests he knows more than he should. It's the kind that suggests our past isn't as buried as we thought. Harold reached for my hand with trembling fingers. Marcus, I called you here tonight because I'm dying, yes, but also because I needed to warn you. Anthony Castellano isn't going to let sleeping dogs lie. He's been building his own empire, his own connections. I think he's coming for you. Why? What does he want? Revenge? His father died in disgrace because of what I did to him, because of how I systematically destroyed his business and his reputation. Anthony knows it wasn't random bad luck. He knows someone was working against his family. Does he know it was? You, he suspects. But more importantly, he's figured out that you're my grandson. He's connected the dots between your parents' death and his father's downfall, and now he's looking for payback. The room felt like it was closing in around me. How do you know all this? 'Cause he's been watching you, Marcus. Just like I have. But where I've been watching with pride, he's been watching with hatred. Been looking for weaknesses, for pressure points, for ways to hurt you the same way he thinks we hurt his family. Ow! What kind of ways? Harold's eyes moved to the window, to the Davidson Industries building visible in the distance. Your company? Marcus. Your employees. The people you care about. He's going to try to destroy everything you've built, just like I destroyed everything his father built. Let him try. I'm not some small-time construction company. Davidson Industries has resources, security, legal protection. You don't understand? Harold interrupted, his voice urgent despite its weakness. Anthony isn't just another businessman looking for revenge. He's connected to people who make his father look like a choir boy. Russian investors, Chinese triads, cartels looking to launder money through legitimate businesses. It's built a network that makes the old Chicago mob look like amateurs. So what are you saying, that I should run? That I should abandon everything? I've built because some criminal's son is holding a grudge. I'm saying you need to be prepared. You need to know what you're up against. And you need to know that everything I did to you, every harsh word, every cruel lesson, was preparing you for this moment. Harold's breathing was becoming more labored, but his eyes were still sharp. There's a safe deposit box at First National. Bank of Chicago, box 1247. The key is in my bedside table drawer at home. Inside that box, you'll find everything. All the records I kept on the Castellanos, all the evidence of their crimes, all the documentation of what really happened to your parents. Why are you giving this to me now? Because you're going to need it. Because Anthony Castellano won't stop until he's destroyed you, or until you've destroyed him. And because it's time for you to finish what your father started, dude. Your father died trying to expose corruption and protect innocent people. You've spent your entire adult life building a company that treats people with dignity and respect. You've become everything he dreamed of being. Now you have the chance to get justice for his death and protect everyone who depends on you. The monitors around Harold's bed were beeping frantically now, and I could see nurses gathering outside the door. But Harold gripped my hand with surprising strength. Promise me something, Marcus. What? Promise me you won't let anger make you into the man I was. Promise me you'll be better than me, even when you're fighting for your life. Promise me you'll remember that the best revenge isn't becoming your enemy. It's proving they could. Never break you. Harold, promise me, he whispered urgently. Promise me you'll stay the man your parents would be proud of, no matter what Anthony Castellano throws at you. I looked into his dying eyes. This man who had shaped my life through cruelty and love and terrible, complicated choices. I promise. He smiled then, really smiled, for the first time I could remember. Good, that's good. Now listen carefully, because I don't have much time left. There's one more thing you need to know about Anthony Castellano, something that changes everything. The nurses were pushing into the room now, but Harold's grip on my hand was like iron. What is it? He's not just coming for you, Marcus. He already has someone inside Davidson Industries. Someone close to you. Someone who's been feeding him information for months. And with that revelation hanging in the air like a time bomb, Harold Thompson closed his eyes and let out his final breath, taking his last secret with him to the grave. 3 weeks after Harold's funeral, I sat in the boardroom of Davidson Industries, staring at faces I'd trusted for years, knowing one of them had betrayed everything we'd built together. The safe deposit box had revealed more than just evidence of my parents' murder. It contained surveillance photos of my own executives meeting with Anthony Castellano. Before we begin today's quarterly review, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me, I need to address something that's come to my attention. I placed a single photograph on the conference table, showed Sarah, my assistant of 8 years, shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit outside the SK Palmer House Hotel. The timestamp read 2 weeks before Harold's death. Sarah's face went white. Marcus, I can explain, can you? I slid another photo across the table. This one showed her handing over a manila envelope. Because I'm having trouble understanding why my most trusted employee has been meeting with Anthony Castellano and providing him with confidential company information. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. But I kept my eyes on Sarah. She'd been more than an employee. She'd been the closest thing to family. I'd allowed myself since building Davidson Industries. The betrayal cut deeper than any hostile takeover attempt. He threatened my daughter, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. He knew where Emily went to school, knew her schedule, knew everything about us. He said if I didn't feed him information about your meetings, your deals, your vulnerabilities, you could have come to me with what? A mob boss's son making veiled threats? Who would have told me to call the police, and we both know how effective that would be against the Castellanos. Sarah's voice cracked. I gave him harmless information. Meeting schedules, client names, things he could have gotten from public filings. I thought I was protecting my child while keeping you safe. I felt the weight of Harold's lesson settling on my shoulders. This was the moment he'd prepared me for, when loyalty and fear collided, when good people made bad choices for desperate reasons. The old Marcus might have fired her immediately. The man Harold had tried to forge would have destroyed her professionally. Instead, I made a different choice. Security will escort you out, I said quietly. But your severance package will include full relocation assistance for you and Emily. New identities if necessary. Anthony Castellano will never threaten your family again. Marcus, you're done. Here, Sarah, but you're not destroyed. That's the difference between Harold's generation and mine. After she left, I turned to my remaining executives. Effective immediately, we're implementing new security protocols. Anyone who has concerns about their safety or their family's safety comes to me directly. We protect our own. Over the next month, Anthony Castellano's attacks escalated.
Yes!
Inspectors suddenly found violations in our buildings that had passed inspection for years. Environmental groups filed lawsuits questioning our sustainable energy initiatives. Labor unions that had worked with us for decades suddenly called strikes. But Harold had taught me something valuable in those final moments: patience. While Castellano burned through his resources trying to destroy Davidson Industries through traditional corruption, I used the evidence from the safe deposit box to build a different kind of case. The FBI was very interested in learning about Anthony Castellano's new criminal empire. Agent Patricia Chen, Rebecca Martinez's successor, had been watching the Castellano family's resurgence for months, detailing not just my parents' murder, but 27 years of documented corruption. She smiled for the first time in our meeting. Mr. Thompson, this is exactly what we needed to bring down Anthony Castellano's entire operation. 6 months later, I stood in the same cemetery where we'd buried Harold, but this time I wasn't alone. Agent Chen stood beside me as we watched the news coverage on my phone. Anthony Castellano had been arrested that morning, along with 14 associates, charged with racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder, including my parents' deaths. Your grandfather would be proud, Agent Chen said. He spent decades fighting these people in the shadows. You brought them into the light. I looked down at Harold's headstone. The inscription was simple. Harold Thompson, he did his best with what he had. It had taken me months to choose those words, but they felt right. He'd been broken, cruel, and wrong about so many things. But in the end, he'd given me everything I needed to finish what my father had started. Marcus? Agent Chen's voice pulled me back to the present. There's something else. We found evidence that Anthony Castellano was planning something bigger than just destroying your company. He was going to frame you for his father's crimes, make it look like Davidson Industries was built on laundered mob money. But it wasn't. Know that. But by the time the truth came out, your reputation would have been destroyed. Your employees would have lost their jobs. Your charitable work would have been tainted. He wanted to corrupt everything good you'd built, just like he thought you'd corrupted everything his father built. I nodded, understanding finally why Harold had been so urgent in those final days. It wasn't just about warning me, it was about making sure I had the tools to protect everyone who depended on me that evening. I returned to Harold's house, which was now legally mine. I'd been avoiding it for months, but tonight felt different. I walked through rooms filled with memories, both good and terrible, till I found myself in his study. There, on his desk, was an envelope with my name on it in Harold's handwriting. Inside was a letter dated 3 years earlier. Marcus, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm dead, and you know the truth about everything. I wrote this letter hoping I'd have the courage to give it to you while I was alive, but I suspect I won't. I'm too much of a coward for that kind of honesty. By now you know about your parents, about the Castellanos, about all the lies I told to keep you safe. You know about the money, about the evidence, about Anthony's plans for revenge. But there's one thing you don't know, and it's the most important thing of all. I was never disappointed in you, Marcus. Not once. Every cruel word I said, every time I called you worthless, it was like swallowing poison. You were brilliant, kind, determined, and creative, everything I'd always dreamed a Thompson could be. You were exactly like your father. And that terrified me because I'd already lost him. I convinced myself that if I could make you strong enough, hard enough, independent enough, then maybe you'd survive what I couldn't protect your father from. I told myself that your hatred was a small price to pay for your safety. I was wrong. Not about the danger that was real, but about thinking I had to break you to save you. You became everything you were meant to be, not because of my cruelty, but despite it. You kept the best parts of yourself alive even when I tried to kill them. You built an empire on kindness, loyalty, and treating people with dignity. You succeeded by being everything I taught you not to be. You proved that strength doesn't require cruelty. that power doesn't require brutality, that success doesn't require sacrificing your humanity. I'm proud of you, Marcus. I've always been proud of you. And I'm sorry I was too broken to say so when it mattered. The letter ended with a postscript. The combination to the safe in my bedroom is your parents' anniversary. August 15th, 1962. Inside you'll find the one thing I kept that belonged to them. I think it's time you had it back. In the safe, wrapped in tissue paper, was my father's architectural drawing of a building he'd designed but never built. At the bottom, in his handwriting, were the words, "For Marcus, may you build a better world than the one we're leaving. You." I sat in Harold's chair, holding my father's dream. Finally understood what my grandfather had been trying to tell me in those final moments. I wasn't worthless. I never had been. I was the bridge between what the Thompson family had been and what it could become. The next morning, I announced Davidson Industries' newest project, a community center in the neighborhood where my parents had died, designed using my father's architectural plans. It would provide free health care, education programs, and legal aid to families who couldn't afford them otherwise. At the groundbreaking ceremony, I spoke about second chances, about choosing love over fear, about building something beautiful. From the ashes of something broken, I spoke about my grandfather, who'd been wrong about many things but right about one, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give, someone is making them strong enough to surpass you. Harold Thompson called me worthless, but he was wrong. I became a CEO, a philanthropist, and a man my parents would have been proud of. And in the end, that was the only validation that mattered. The building would be called the James and Catherine Thompson Community Center, named for my parents. But in the lobby, there would be a small plaque dedicated to Harold Thompson, with words I'd finally found the strength to forgive. For the man who loved imperfectly, but completely, and who gave everything to ensure his family's future, because sometimes the greatest success isn't proving someone wrong, it's understanding why they needed to be wrong, and choosing to be better anyway. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.